Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
Coming to Independent Lens.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
Hard work and determination. Strong qualities in any teenager.
I have to finish school. That is not a choice.
But when you're homeless, they are essential.
I really want to go to college.
Join Alaska Public Media on Friday, April 17th from 12 to 1 p.m. for a screening of The Homestretch, chat, and conversation about homeless teens. More at alaskapublic.org.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello, and thanks once again for joining us for this Saturday show. Flood potential is actually below average here for quite a large area of south central and all of southwest Alaska, including the Seward Peninsula and back in toward the Kobuk and Buckland areas there were actually low to moderate, I believe, on the Buckland River there, but not looking at anything serious in breakup flooding, at least at this point in time. So going to the satellite, you can see the next storm system here southwest of Shemya. That will be moving northeastward and bringing some gale force winds into the central Aleutians later tonight and tomorrow, and then over the eastern Aleutians on Monday. This system should end up moving into the Gulf of Alaska Tuesday night, and by Wednesday should be in the Gulf, so be moving quite a ways here, but should stay south of the chain and the peninsula. Possible storm force winds with that Monday afternoon here for possibly the Alaska Peninsula, but right now just gale force wind warnings are out. And for the Gulf of Alaska, low pressure, cold upper low here in the Gulf, that bringing some pretty good showers into the southeast coast today, along with some gusty winds. June reporting east winds gusting 35 miles an hour with numerous showers all across the southeast coast, heaviest up to the north here. And then a rather widespread area of light snow occurring over the Tanana Valley, upper Yukon Valley there. Snow reported at Fairbanks, North Pole, Delta, and also Fort Yukon up there, but Northway just getting into the dry area there, seeing some clearing, as was the Copper River Basin, and out here toward the, well actually to the east of White Mountain there, seeing some breaks in the overcast. Otherwise a band of light snow extending from the western Arctic coast down into the northeast Bering Sea here, with Tin City getting some wind, still gusting to about 40 miles an hour, but the brisk wind advisories should be coming down for the area there from Wales to Cape Thompson this evening. And out to the west, see a band of moisture moving across the eastern Aleutians. Well, that'll shift off to the southeast tonight, kind of busted by today's map a little quick. Low pressure over the Kenai Peninsula. That'll keep showers of rain or snow that are going on across much of the area right now. Going into this evening, areas of light snow continue up across the Tanana, upper Yukon Valley areas. Amounts, though, expected to be no more than an inch, mostly less than an inch, and then just some widely scattered moisture continuing out here over the southwest interior. Had snow today at Bethel, Sparrowvon, and those areas likely to see some continuing snow shower activity. Lighter winds, as I mentioned here, for the St. Lawrence Island area, and even through the Bering Strait, and of course the southeast Chukchi Sea areas, as well as the Arctic coast there. A few passing light, scattered, isolated snow showers, and that's about it with some patchy fog. But northwest winds carrying that moisture down to the Alaska Peninsula, where they saw snow showers today. See snow showers tonight with those winds gusting 30 to 35 miles an hour out of the northwest, gradually diminishing as you head west here. High pressure will be right over the Aleutians there, and you can see the outer edge of the next storm system, which tomorrow moves to about this position, so won't bring gales to the area yet tomorrow, but probably small craft advisories there for the far western areas for east and northeast winds, and then a couple more bands of showers moving into the panhandle. So numerous rain tomorrow afternoon, becoming rain likely tomorrow night as moisture from this next system spreads northward. Again, low pressure up over the upper Yukon Valley, making for numerous light snow showers across that area again down in the Tanana Valley. Probably not as widespread and continuous as today, which means you could see a few more breaks in the overcast showing up. Same thing, Copper River Basin basically drying out, and again some clearing, but afternoon showers on the increase like today due to the daytime heating should trigger some more rain and snow showers here depending on your elevation and the time of day, whether it's rain or snow. But those should all be rain showers out in the Gulf of Alaska into the northeast or into the northern southeast coast. Winds lightening up now, still some leftover moisture for some snow showers, especially along the Alaska Peninsula over to the eastern Aleutians, but see the gradient lightening up, basically high pressure developing out there, and the next storm will move eastward and east-northeast, and that's going to put probably gale force winds into the central Aleutians from Atka and on into the Unalaska Nikolsky area. And also watch for those winds to increase here for the Alaska Peninsula, along with rain from Cold Bay all the way back out to Atka, with again possible storm force winds in advance of that front late tomorrow night and or on Monday here. Right now just carrying gale force winds, full gales in those areas. High pressure making for light winds and partly to mostly sunny skies here from Bristol Bay right up across the western third of the state all the way to the Arctic coast. Looking pretty good, just some variable clouds with east winds, say 20 knots on the eastern coast to 10 to 15 or less here on the west side. Weak high pressure right over the Seward Peninsula. Temperatures today shaped up to the upper 30s to lower 40s here across the Panhandle. Cooler down to the south and to the north. Both Sitka and Port Alexander reported 42 degrees, 38 at Yakutat, 44 at Cordova. Valdez a little cooler at 41 degrees, 45 in Palmer, 40 degrees Kenai, and 1 degree cooler than that down at Homer. That same temperature also reported at Gulkana there in the Copper River Basin. A little cooler with the areas of snow going, but again, a little bit of sunshine. North way up to 40 degrees, but Fairbanks right at 33. And snow, light snow, 27 degrees at Fort Yukon, 28 over at Bettles, 3 degrees Anatuvik, but up to 28 at Arctic Village. And temperatures a little above zero this afternoon, 1 degree at Barrow, 17 at Kaktovik. And on the west side, generally running 5 to 10 above there, 8 degrees, one of the warmer locations at Point Lay. Same thing at Kotzebue. Kivalina had 12 above, 14 at Ambler there in the Kobuk Valley, and then 34 at McGrath with cooler 20s to the teens as you head down to the southwest coast, with Makoriak at 19, 18 degrees there at St. Mary's, and 23 at St. Michael, 2 degrees at Tin City, Savunga, St. Lawrence Island. They reported 10 and 14 over at Nome. And looking farther out to the west there, you can see the mid-20s here over the Pribilofs during the afternoon hours with those northwest winds. 32 on Alaska, 30 degrees at Cold Bay, same thing at Pilot Point, 28 at King Salmon, and 30s, lower to mid-30s, depending on where you are, 36 degrees at Atka, but quite a bit cooler, just 29 at Shemya. And the lows for tonight out there about where you are now, upper 20s, lower 30s for the central and eastern Aleutians, with mid-20s here over Bristol Bay and south central Alaska. Mid-20s or 25 to 30 about sums it up, with mid-20s through the Tanana Valley. Colder, a little below zero here over the North Slope, but staying just above zero along the Arctic coast, all the way down to the Seward Peninsula areas, and mid-30s over the Panhandle. And the highs for tomorrow, upper 30s to lower 40s here to possibly mid-40s over the southern southeast coast, with 30s over the interior, but south of the mountains, mid-40s again over south central Alaska in the afternoon. Cooler to the north, but generally above zero most locations, even on the North Slope, but struggling to reach 10 degrees there at Shishmaref, but Savunga and Gamble should push up to about 14. Upper 20s, the forecast high for the Pribilofs, and upper 30s for the Aleutians. Flying weather, marginal VFR here across the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, a little more widespread over the Yukon than the Kuskokwim. and then kind of breaking up, and then along the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, marginal VFR from St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait and north across the Chukchi Sea. Eastern Arctic coast, a little lower, marginal VFR there with some occasional IFR, mostly from Barrow eastward. Forecasting VFR there on the west side, and then with that leftover moisture, still looking at marginal VFR from roughly the Alaska Range north across the White Mountains in the Tanana Valley, with IFR as you approach the eastern and southern slopes of the eastern Brooks Range, marginal VFR for the North Gulf Coast, excuse me, and Prince William Sound with marginal VFR here along the western Alaska Range. And then this next area poised to move in tomorrow night into the central Aleutians and then progress eastward thereafter. Passes looking like this: Anaktuvik, possible marginal conditions on the southern entrance, otherwise VFR to the north. And Adigan, that same forecast as well, occasional marginal VFR possible on the southern entrance, but through the pass onto the north should be VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasionally marginal. Rainy, same forecast, occasional marginal VFR. Windy, starting out marginal, trending toward VFR throughout the late morning hours and into the afternoon. Then moving over to Isabel, same forecast, lowest conditions early on, then some gradual improvement throughout the day, becoming VFR. Mentasta, possible on the southern entrance, could see some marginal VFR, otherwise becoming VFR probably by mid-morning. Tanita looks VFR from the east entrance over to the west and through the pass itself. Portage, occasional marginal VFR in the eastern entrance, otherwise the west side looking pretty good. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR improving to VFR probably by the afternoon. And looking at the freezing levels, well, 32 degrees occurred at 2,200 feet at Anchorage this afternoon, and tomorrow you can see the 2,000-foot isotherm here is all the way down to just about Dixon entrance at the surface. This is actually late tonight, early tomorrow morning, hugging the coastline out here and nudging a little to the north, but not much over the central Aleutians. Everything else suppressed on down to the south. Looking at icing threats, again, this area poised to move northward tomorrow evening, and overnight tomorrow night as that low center tracks northward just off the coast in toward Monday. So only getting to about this point by tomorrow afternoon. Scattered areas of light rime to isolated moderate mixed icing, or rime or mixed icing, either one here through the interior. And then this area here staying off the coast, they'll probably slide into the central areas tomorrow evening and then continue eastward tomorrow night and into Monday, affecting the eastern Aleutians and eventually the Alaska Peninsula. And the upper level wind flow chart showing pretty good jet here associated with that system tomorrow at about this location. Again, I'll be tracking east-northeastward, a trough still coming through south central Alaska, extending back to the northwest to the parent low there over Russia. So that's going to keep it unsettled with the scattered rain and snow showers over south central Alaska and the chance of some continuing snow showers up over the east central interior. 9,000-foot winds, not too strong here through the interior, just 5 to 10 knots, several lows with one near the Barren Islands, another one up there just east of Kivalina, and then over the Yukon, south winds 20 to 25 knots across the Panhandle, and then northwesterlies 25, but not all that strong, but reaching 25 to 30 knots here across the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. High pressure, lighter winds, and getting a little lighter here over the western Aleutians with the stronger winds just to the south. And again, that'll be pulling up tomorrow night into the central Aleutians. You can see 20 knots out of the east and southeast, but 55 knots just to the south of that. And otherwise at 3,000 feet, same pattern, northwest winds across the Bering Sea take more of a westerly turn coming across the peninsula and into the Gulf and taking south to north 10 to 20 knots, but pretty light winds over the central and eastern interior areas right down to the Copper River Basin. And easterlies 15 to 20, mostly off the Arctic coast there, and southerlies 10 to 20 over the Panhandle. The stronger winds still associated with this low staying to the south until tomorrow night and on Monday. Turbulence, again, this ready to move in northward. That will come northward tomorrow night and during the day on Monday, but through tomorrow, should be restricted to Dixon Entrance, so pretty smooth over the panhandle, pretty smooth over the interior, just some mechanical stuff around Kodiak Island of the light to isolated moderate varieties, and back over the Kilbrook Mountains. And then it could be a little more moderate here. Again, northwest winds will be strongest in this area, so moderate chop for the Alaska Peninsula on the lee side of things. And then big area of turbulence here, again, advancing northeastward, but not really affecting the area until tomorrow night. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined once again by the science liaison of GINA, Eric Stevens. GINA, of course, is the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And GINA is all about satellites, and Eric is always here to tell some really cool stuff about satellites. Now, the last time you were here, we talked about how the weather satellites can see clouds and what's under the clouds, but you're telling me that satellites can do a lot more, even protect the general public with aviation safety information.
That's right. There's one particular aspect of satellites we're going to talk about today that might not be immediately obvious, and that is detecting things in the atmosphere that are not clouds, that are not snow, not rain, but rather a hazard that can happen here in Alaska, and that is volcanic ash.
Of course.
When a volcano goes off, puts ash in the air, this is of course a hazard to the public if the ash were to fall on the ground in accumulating amounts.
Sure.
Additionally, while the ash is in the air, and this is the more frequent hazard, is it's a hazard to aviation because you cannot fly an airplane into volcanic ash without great risk. Worst case scenario, the ash gets into a jet engine, wrecks the engine, kills the engine, and now you have an airplane flying with no engines. It won't fly for long. So aviators need to avoid that ash. How do you avoid the ash? You have to know where it is by identifying it with a satellite image and perhaps predicting then where the ash will flow with the overall weather patterns. Satellites are so important for identifying when a volcano goes off and then tracking the ash after the volcano injects the ash into the atmosphere.
Now, are you talking about seeing the heat signature or a huge volcanic plume with a cloud that we're used to seeing in the really pretty pictures of any Alaska volcano that's erupted recently, Redoubt, for example? Or are we talking about the really fine details? Because this is polar orbiting satellites, the ones that are very low to the ground, right?
The geostationary satellites can do some detection. The polar orbiters, like you say, they're closer to the Earth. They give the even better view. In answer to your question, I would say all of the above.
Oh, okay.
A heat signature from a volcano going off with all the heat that comes with the eruption, that can be identified in infrared imagery.
Okay.
We've got images from the Kamchatka Peninsula. That's the far eastern part of Russia on the western side of the Bering Sea, loaded with volcanoes.
Right.
You know, Alaska has plenty of volcanoes of its own. We can also be affected when a volcano goes off in Kamchatka, say, and then the weather carries that ash toward Alaska from the west.
Right.
You can see the infrared heat signature, like you say. Also, the ash in the air can be detected by doing some sophisticated channel differencing within the satellite data. You can find the identification of sulfur dioxide, say, that's a component of the volcanic emission, and you can trace this with the satellite imagery. Sometimes volcanoes go off that haven't gone off before, and we're not expecting them to go off. Say if there's no seismometers around a given volcano that hasn't gone off in 100 years, you might not be expecting it to go off. In the satellite imagery, since satellites can be globally comprehensive, that might be the first sign that you have that a volcano in an unexpected area is going off.
So it's a good backup system. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And people are working all the time on automating the interrogation of satellite data by computers to provide a first alert to a human, so the software will say, we think this might be important. Human, go take a closer look. Because the people are still the best way to interrogate the imagery, but the planet's a big place, and we can't be looking everywhere all the time, so the software helps give a first cut. And then in Alaska, there's a special kind of surprise angle where the satellites are helpful, and that is the Katmai eruption of 1912. Huge eruption. There is still somewhat of a moonscape out there in southwest Alaska where all this ash is laying on the ground. And sometimes a strong weather pattern comes along where we have roaring northwest winds that go across the Alaska Peninsula there and can actually pick some of this ash up off the ground. No volcano is going off. This was more than 100 years ago that volcano actually blew. So you're not going to see a heat signature like we were discussing. There will be no seismic signature of a volcano going off. So those data sets, they'll say, oh, no problem. But you can see in some of the satellite imagery this ash, as it's called, resuspended. When the wind comes along, picks it up, the ash can be lofted a few thousand feet in the air just with the wind. And an airplane flying into that plume is exposed to some danger. So we need to track that ash to provide guidance to aviators that you don't want to be flying here at these elevations in this area. We've got some imagery of the resuspension, and you can see the wind blowing strongly from the northwest, picking up the ash and blowing it down to the southeast. And so that's another, perhaps not immediately obvious hazard of volcanic ash. Katmai is the gift that keeps on giving, for sure.
Very good. So we've got satellites that can help us understand the weather from the past and the immediate past. And we talked last time about how that's feeding into the forecast modeling to help improve predictions. But now they're also protecting the general public with aviation-sensitive information and watching volcanoes, whether they're erupting or maybe have erupted in the past, and finding the left-behinds from those volcanic events there. So really impressive stuff. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again today. And you're a gift that keeps on giving from the satellite community, so thanks a lot, and we hope to have you back again soon. Again, Eric Stevens with GINA at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And if you'd like to check out any of the information that Eric has shared with us again today, you can do that very easily by going to www.gina.alaska.edu. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts.
Welcome back. Well, looking at the sea ice of the greater northern Bering Sea area, St. George is, I believe, about 40 miles from St. Paul, so it looks like the ice was about 35 to 40 miles north of St. Paul Island there. Not expecting a lot of change over the next few days, continued north and northwest winds, so they'll be pulling some strips off the ice edge, but really overall it's not expected to push down to the island at all. So moving on to marine forecasts here. Southwesterlies 20 knots on the central and south coast, 25 knots from the south-southwest on up to the north. Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, 25 knots tomorrow afternoon. And southeasterlies at about 20 knots here for the southern central inside water areas. And then for Clarence Strait, look for those southeast winds to increase to 30 knots on Monday, with seas building 7 to 13 feet. And of course, highest out toward Dixon entrance there. And that low center, if it tracks northward here off the coast, you'll have easterlies at 35 knots, followed by southwest 40. So gales around that low center, it's forecast to track north, something like this, northeast winds 25. And with the strong pressure falls, look for these winds to pick up from the north up to 30 knots there through northern Lynn Canal. And Stevens Passage, north 20, higher gusts out of the bays and passes, northwest 25 for the north coast area. And then for Prince William Sound, look for northeast winds at 15 tomorrow. Light and variable winds for northern Cook Inlet become southerly at 15 in the afternoon, maybe up to 20 here south of the Forelands. Make that west 20 for the Kamishak Bay area and Augustine Island, southwest 20 from the Barren Islands into the western Gulf Coast, actually all of the North Gulf Coast, southwest 20, seas running 7 to 9 feet there. West 20, 8-foot seas for Kodiak Island. Shelikof Strait, westerlies at 15 with 3-foot seas. Then on Monday, northwest 15 for the Sound. Cook Inlet northwest at 10, just about everywhere here. Light west winds for Kamishak Bay. Southwest at 15 for Shelikof Strait. Westerlies 15 for the east side of Kodiak Island. Up across the Barrens, hold on to northwesterlies at 20 for the North Gulf Coast. For Bristol Bay, northwest 15, and then brisk wind, or actually small craft advisories here for northwesterlies. Pretty brisk, up to 25 knots across the Alaska Peninsula areas, and about 20 knots here southwest of Sitkinak to about Chignik. And then for Monday, kind of light variable winds start out northwest, go light variable, then late in the day turning around to the southeast, but nothing over 15 knots for Bristol Bay. And high pressure ridge coming across this area, so light westerlies to start with at 15, then kind of get light and variable, and then eventually turn southeast late in the day to Monday evening. Small craft advisories here on the Pacific side of the peninsula for those east winds kicking up to 30 knots, seas building to 13 feet. For the Aleutians, northwest 20 to 25 across the Fox Islands. Lighter westerlies here for Adak and Atka. And then that next storm system down to the south, winds possibly rising as high as 25 knots, especially for the Pacific zones here for the west central Aleutians, and seas building to 8 feet. And then gale force northerlies for Monday out in that area, but lighter back towards Shimei and Attu. And full gales here from the eastern Aleutians on the Pacific side all the way south of Adak and Atka, with 30 to 35 knot northeasterlies there in the Bering Sea side of the zones. For the southwest coast, northwest 15 to 20 knots, strongest south of Nunivak Island there across Kuskokwim Bay, lighter as you get up towards St. Lawrence Island, and light variable northwest winds here for the northern Bering Sea, and the Pribilofs looking northwest at about 15. And then those change direction in response to that big storm system going by to the south of the Aleutians, northwest, coming up to 20, could be up to 25 knots for St. George late in the day on Monday. Otherwise, light variable winds for the northern Bering Sea, light winds from the north, or light and variable for St. Lawrence Island, northeasterlies 10 to 15 along the southwest coast. And for the Arctic coast, east 20 knots from the central Beaufort Sea coastline all the way over to demarcation point, and then lighter northeast winds here for the western Arctic coast. And from Wales to Cape Thompson, northwest 15 and more of a north direction there, Cape Lisburne to Point Hope. And for Monday, light west winds, light southwest winds, and then light southeast winds there for the western coastlines. And not too bad here, lighter, but still up to 20 knots there for Kaktovik to demarcation point. And for tonight again, hit and miss snow showers here from Copper River Basin, south central Alaska, all the way up to the Brooks Range. Drier out here to the west and northwest, but still some leftover moisture and some light snow and flurries. Bands of showers continue to rotate into the southeast coast. There's the next storm spreading rain in late in the day, and then definitely tomorrow evening, tomorrow night. A decrease in this wind and snow shower activity here for the eastern Bering Sea. A couple of low centers making for light wind patterns here through the eastern central interior. And that next storm moving to the eastern Aleutians for some pretty good winds and rain to the Alaska Peninsula as well. And that storm system tracks up the southeast coast. Well, that's a look at the weather for today. Thanks for joining us, and see you tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.